Hey folks, Mike Dawkins from Worldcast Anglers here with your Jackson Hole fly fishing forecast for the weekend of August 23rd and 24th. It's hot, it's dry, it's windy. Summer continues in the greater Jackson Hole and Teton Valley area. I know I've been saying it a bit again and again, but these past 2.5 weeks have been a bit of rinse and repeat coming through from the end of our summer season. We're waiting for our fall season to get going, and we're sort of just stuck in this limbo area. Last week we had some pretty good thunderstorms and some precipitation there on Sunday and Monday that gave us a little bit of reprieve from the heat and the dry conditions, but not necessarily enough, because we're back this week into the mid 80s with plenty of sun and plenty of heat to go around with it. I've got some good news for everyone, though. If we're starting to look into our 10-day forecast, we're starting to see some cooler temperatures, and we're starting to see some precipitation, sort of a beginning of that shift maybe into our fall weather patterns. We're sort of in, like I was saying, that limbo period where our summer hatches are sort of dwindling. We're not seeing the PMDs that we used to. We're not seeing, much of the stoneflies besides the mutant stones that we used to. And we haven't really had the weather conditions to kickstart our mahoganies. We're seeing some HECUBAS and some things like that, but it's that time of year when terrestrials start to make that plug in between the seasonal shifts that we're experiencing right now. So that's your hoppers, your beetles, your ants, and sort of those midday doldrums where you're not seeing any bugs hatching. Terrestrials are going to make a major play here, as they have been the past week and into the weeks moving forward. Saturday, it's 87 and 51, lots of sunshine, pretty traditional Rocky Mountain summer, hot, dry weather that we've been experiencing. And on Sunday, we've got 84 and 55. Our 10-day, as I was alluding to, we've got rain in the forecast, pretty heavy rain, especially on Tuesday and Wednesday. We've got highs in the high 60s and low 70s, and lows there in the high 30s and low 40s. So we're going to see a really good shift, and I would be ready with a lot of mahoganies. I'd be ready with a lot of blue wing olives and some of those first fall bugs to start hatching next week after this weekend when we start to see this cooling trend happen. Be ready for that, because those, like I was saying, those PMDs and our summer hatches just definitely haven't been there. They're sort of at the end of their cycle for the summer season. Jackson Lake, we've got 81% of capacity. Palisades Reservoir, we've got 34% of capacity. South Fork of the Snake, we finally saw a flow drop come out of it. We've got 10,700 CFS coming out of Palisades Reservoir, 11,400 CFS there on the lower river. That flow drop has really helped. It's just sort of freshened things up a bit. It's got fish moved around in different places and has been a little bit more friendly to our fishing conditions. I think that timed with this shift in our weather coming up next week, it's going to be really good. We've had mutant stones hatching, which has provided some really good big dry fly fishing from dawn periods until around 10 or 11 o'clock. The rest of the day has been filled with dry droppers and some pretty long droppers, in that 1.5 meters, to 3-4 feet with rubber legs, Duracells, black Perdigons. Any of those patterns has been productive as we start to shift in to those later periods when those stoneflies aren't around as much. Plug in some terrestrials and you'll be ready to go on the South Fork of the Snake for this hot, dry weekend. Enjoy it, because we've got fall sort of knocking there on our door. The Snake and Jackson, we've got 2,260 CFS coming out of Jackson Lake Dam. That's an increase of 200 and about 275 CFS from last week. In the lower rivers, around 3,360 CFS, which is, they're starting to look at the total map and the basin water managers there as they start to move a little bit of water downstream from Jackson Lake into Palisades towards American Falls to finish out the agricultural and consumptive water season. Hecubas, beginning to some of the mahoganies and mutant stones have been there on the Snake, especially with some of those cooler days that we've been experiencing. And very similarly to the South Fork, this next sort of cool weather period we're going to have next week, I think the fishing is going to be really darn good, as if the water managers keep things stable and don't mess with anything. 2,000 to 200 2,275 CFS is a pretty good amount of water coming out of the Snake for this time of year. So it does seem a little bit pushy, and there still seems to be a lot of flow and volume in there. But I think the fishing and the fish will definitely like some of these cooler days and cooler nights, low angle sun, overcast, everything that we've been dreaming of coming up here in the next 10 days. The Teton here in Teton Valley, 190 CFS up here around Driggs. We saw it drop off from the rain and the thunderstorms that we had on Sunday and Monday, where we got a little bump of fresh water. We've got 468 CFS in the lower river. PMDs are dwindling out. We're starting to see the beginning of some of the HECUBAS and some of the mahoganies. Still, caddis and terrestrials are the name of the game there for the upper Teton. The lower river, there's been a lot of mutant stones around. Dry droppers, hopper droppers, things of those sorts have been really productive for those journeying down there in the canyon in the lower river, especially in those early morning periods when water temperatures are still the coolest. As I was saying, today it's 87 degrees, so we're not totally out of those super warm water temperatures yet, but we're getting closer towards those fall period where they're not going to be as pronounced as we did say in the end of July, beginning of August. The Henry's Fork, we've got 661 CFS coming out of Island Park Dam up there by the box, 1,450 CFS on the lower river. Most of that turbidity event up there on Island Park Reservoir and in the box is sort of settled out a bit. We're still seeing some good dry dropper fishing in the box, and we're still seeing some good nymphing in the box, especially with that turbidity event subsiding. The ranch is mostly a terrestrial game. Your honey ants, your water wasps, your CDC ants, your small beetles, your small hoppers, maybe some PMDs, some rusty spinners. I would have those in my fly box, and I definitely would have some of those mahoganies and blue-wing olives in my fly box, especially if I'm going to fish later, next week when we get this cooling trend and some of these overcast skies. Flat Creek and Jackson has sort of been a little bit of the same, little bit of everything, not much on the PMD scale, still terrestrials, hoppers, beetles, ants, calabatus, midges, caddis, maybe the beginning of some of those hecuba drakes, as well as the mahoganies and the blue wings when we get those cooler water periods. So be ready with that. Long leaders, light tippets, stealthy profile. We're still seeing a good amount of water in Flat Creek and some really good fishing opportunities in all of our walkway streams for here on out, especially as we get some shorter days and a little bit longer nights that are cooling things off. So those still round out a really good mix if you're tired or you just want to do something new and get out of the boat. I preach it sort of every week, but being pleasantly surprised and going to walk around and explore for a couple fishing days isn't going to hurt you. You're always going to have the Henry's Fork or the Teton or the Snake or the South Fork to go float this fall season, where maybe things get a little bit too cold or too low, for some of those tributaries. So journey out there, and I think you'll enjoy it. You'll really enjoy it with especially some big dry fly fishing, some hopper fishing, or some of those mutants. We're open Monday through Sunday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the rest of the summer season. We hope everybody stops in, stocks up, gets ready. We thank everybody for their support through the summer. I'm ready for fall. I'm ready for a little bit of a cooling trend and some overcast days and some rain. So let's get out, enjoy it next week if you can on the weekdays during the water. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised and have a lot of fun. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week.